Welcome to Rawcast A.D. Continuing our audio-only throwback series to the old era of Rawcast A.D., here is the old school episode 2, being shuffled back into episode 27 of the current run of Rawcast A.D., and this is the episode where I sat down with my old college friend Spencer to discuss higher education from a millennial perspective. Hopefully it's enjoyable. I had a good time listening back when I was mixing this episode, and stay with us as we get one step closer, incrementally moving towards fully video podcast episodes. All right, guys, welcome to the first episode of now Rawcast A.D. I'm your host, Doug, with my good buddy Spencer. We met in college. How's it going, Spencer?
Are we on the internet?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're recording, but we'll upload later.
I'm less scared now. I'm fine, by the way.
Fine, by the way. So as we were getting ready to start this episode, we got on the topic of work and school. Spencer just graduated with his undergrad. What did you go to school for again?
Business and economics, 2 degrees, 1 paper.
Oh, see? That is such interesting talk. There are women that are going to hear this at a bar, which is so unlikely, and they're just going to go, oh, that guy sounds like he went to school for something awesome. Which, I mean... I went to school for arts management, and that's one of those where, no offense to the arts management folk, the students.
Sorry, Rachel.
Spencer's lady, Rachel, went to school for arts management as well. To me, it's a great field overall, as far as the work and what you're doing. But I mean, I was 3/4 of the way through, and I wanted to get into the music industry. And they're like, well, you got to pick your internship. I'm like, well, I kind of want to do this. And we're like, well, you know, we do lean towards the nonprofit side. And I'm like, okay, I'm not passionate enough about the arts to go through a 4-year program, go $40,000 to $45,000 in debt to make $20,000 a year. Because that, as far as I know, that still is the average income.
But that's what UWSP is really great at, is letting you choose your own path and be free, while at the same time telling you exactly what you have to do and how to do not what you want to do at all at the end of the day.
Oh, exactly. It's funny to me that I've heard it before, and I believe in it greatly, deeply. Like these kids coming out of high school, they're so pressured to like, let's go to college. You need to go to college. You got to get a good job. So in order to do that, you got to get a good education. And I mean, 18 years old, here's somebody that had to ask permission to go take a piss 6 months ago, now being told by their college advisor that they need to plan their future. I'm a firm believer in at least taking a year off.
Absolutely.
From high school.
Absolutely.
Work a job for a little bit, realize how much that job sucks, or if you like it, maybe pursue an education in that field.
I mean, there are some kids out there, some 18-year-old, like, young adults who can excel at everything they do, and they know what they want to do, but as evidenced by a lot of people at UWSP, they are going out drinking every night, they're not going to classes. The dropout rate, I think, is what, like, we have 40% retention? Like, that's absurd. Like, to retain 40% of your students?
The numbers have been getting worse.
Absolutely.
And I mean, even on the flip side, you know, I don't know how things are with you as far as like financial aid or anything. I know a mutual friend of ours went to school entirely on loans. With some help from family and my own savings, I was able to pay for roughly half of the cost of my undergrad. And I still sat back looking at that $21,000 loan going, shit, what am I going to do?
I think my fiance and I are roughly 60 to 70 in debt, thousand.
It kind of is just ridiculous. That's why I kind of lean towards Bernie Sanders as far as the next political candidate, even though the election's next year. People are fired up about it already. But I saw yesterday, I think it was, the Huffington Post had an article about what every millennial wishes you understood about student loans, or student loan debt, excuse me. And they just went through, like, I mean, you're going to have to read the article yourself in depth, but it was written by Amanda Oliver, just to make sure that credit is given. And they just go through the topics of
how it does suck for us, back in the 70s, I think it was you had, if as long as you had a part-time job where you worked just shy of 4 hours a day, you could afford the cost of tuition.
Yeah.
And in the article, they go on to say that there are only four main ways to discharge your student loan debt. And they do say as well, and I love this article because it is basically us to a T as far as what our message would be as far as how frustrating the student loan debt is. You can either pay on it for 25 years consistently, then have it forgiven, work for peanuts for 10 years and have it forgiven, or die. Those are like the only ways that we're able to pay off this debt.
I mean, the default rate is increasing. I wish we had some numbers
Yeah,
here.
it was 8% last I saw, and the rates are going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I went back. I screwed around too much my freshman and sophomore year. In my junior year of college is when I met you. That was about 2009, 2010, and we started hanging out. I ended up having to move back to Iola from Stevens Point. That's like a half-hour drive. The commute sucks, especially if you only work part-time. And I mean, my junior year, for a while, I busted my ass in school.
I remember sitting in the brew house and you just had your agenda like filled out with all this stuff. I'm like, I don't even understand how someone is that organized.
And I mean, it was like to a T.
Yeah,
like
almost half-an-hour segments. Like this half an hour, I'm gonna have lunch, but I only have 15 minutes of that half an hour realistically.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Or like turn in assignment.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have class that day, but we still had to drop our papers into
Yep.
the mailbox. So I like had to write it down because otherwise I'd forget. I mean, when I was commuting from Iola, you know how bad it would suck if I got all the way back home, nestled in for the night, and then, I mean, by that point, I was still working nights, so I'd get home at, 4 in the morning. But, like, to get home and go, the deadline for that assignment was midnight. But, I mean, they go on here to say, talk about us being lazy and all that. And I mean, geez, you've had a job.
Last semester, I had 68-hour weeks between two jobs in school.
Yep. And my junior year, that's right before I can't remember. It must have been right before we started hanging out. I was working two night jobs, one in the evening, one the twilight shift, they called it. And still had an 8-hour schedule per day for classes. And I would sleep maybe 3 nights a week just to make sure that I got all of the work done. And I still don't feel like I recovered from that. I feel like I went through, and I'm sorry to our soldiers, but I literally feel like I went through a war on my own. It was my own personal jihad. But, so I mean, we've worked our asses off, but the cost of college tuition has gone up 1,120%.
And now the differential tuition, it's another $300 per student at UWSP.
Oh, are you serious?
Yep.
I mean, when I started UWSP in 2007, I thought the tuition rates were too high, and I think it was like
And we're
20.
low.
Yeah, we were lower in the system, but I mean, it was like, I know the number 2,600 is floating around per semester, but I don't remember when that was. But just from the time I started in 2007, and I think my brother in 2011, 2012 maybe, in that time it had already gone up a few $100s per semester. And did the education get better?
No.
Did we expand programs and advance the technology of the campus?
In fact, with the Walker cuts, we lost in our department like double-digit professors. Like
Yeah.
Just in the CPS alone.
I know a handful of people that worked at UWSP, and they were constantly looking for jobs because they were told, we don't know if we're going to have a job for you next year.
Absolutely.
And that kind of pisses me off. I'm going to bash on UW-Madison, too. Because when the UW system was told, like, hey, we're going to carve out your insides by the government, UWSP was planned to foot the largest portion of the cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, UW-Madison couldn't take one on the head?
That's a prestigious school.
Well, it is, but UWSP they're nationally known.
They're not Madison.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have that good football team.
Pretty much.
Sports.
Where are we supposed to get our
don't get
older
us
money?
started on sports. I'm still a huge Washington Redskins fan, and I know that can open up a whole new can of worms about, the Redskins name. Let's bypass that. Although I do have to go back and say, when I was sitting down with Easy Outdoors, I listened to the episode again, and I realized that I said I couldn't stand the office job I had, where I sat at my desk all day and was on the phone the majority of the day, calls back and forth, back and forth. I said, that's not a real job, and then kind of moved on from the subject. I'll be the first to admit, in my opinion, that isn't just a real job, it's a tough job. Depending on your personality, I mean, I can't sit all day just staring at a screen and calling people to figure out problems.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So when I say that's not a real job, that's what I mean. Like, that isn't just a job to me, that is literally a sentence. Like, you are committing yourself to sit here and be confined for an indefinite time period, but all this really amounts to is us buying portions of your life one day at a time.
Pretty much.
It's
Pretty much.
it's just not something I could see myself doing.
And at the end of the day, no one was like, that guy helped me fix my problem. No
Yeah.
one cared about you personally or thought about you ever, and you were never rewarded for any of the help you were given. It's just the most unrewarding, terrible existence in that cube farm.
It may be funny to watch Office Space and enjoy the story, enjoy the humor, and like understand what the guy's going through. But when you live it, you just end up watching Office Space going, I know, right?
So how many days until you had the drill and you were, taking the handle off the door?
I don't know if that even ever occurred to me. I so quickly went from this will be a great opportunity into an office environment. It'll get me some management experience. And I mean, because that's what we have to do. As the millennials, well, we came out of, or like we were coming out of our undergrad still during one of the worst economic recessions of our time. And so the job outlook looked awful. In this Huffington Post article, they even mention, like, if the baby boomers were getting laid off, what makes anybody think they would hire us noobs?
The baby boomers actually are delaying their retirement too, which is making it even harder to get jobs.
Oh,
because the
yeah.
stocks are crashing and everything, and they're not doing so hot, so their retirement funds are dwindling. So they're planning on staying 3-5 more years.
Congress keeps taking out of the Social Security fund to, front the bill on other things, and them delaying their retirements. They're thinking of themselves in a kind of stagnating progress by doing that.
What's really nice though, in a lot of corporations now, they're creating mentor programs. So instead of them just sitting there, sucking up money and jobs, they're actually getting to connect to the people below them and give all that knowledge to them. There's actual like intranet set up and things like that. So everything they learned in the 30 years in that company is actually being transferred to the people lower in different positions. So when they do retire, like if they all retired
They're
at
just
once,
gonna get
corporations
phased
are
out.
going to be screwed,
Yo, absolutely.
But now that they're there for 3 more years, those people are going to have all that knowledge now. So definitely pros cons to it. Like it is kind of nice that the corporations in general and organizations aren't going to see this 20% collapse in
yeah, you
profit
can't
revenue.
create a corporate vacuum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not that we're huge fans of corporate America, but they served a purpose.
Actually, I have a really good segue. We were talking about graduating and finals and politics. I had a really interesting final. I feel like I didn't actually answer any of the questions because it made me so personally angry and involved. There was this one question, like about living wages, and this one wasn't too bad. How do you feel about living wages, and why do you think people are against living wages? I'm sure you have. Why do you think people don't like living wages? Because I have a very different, not great view on why people are angry.
See, to me, it's the people that already have the living wages that are against living wages, so to speak, to a point to where they're then part of the haves. And if you don't have, you're essentially working a job where you're trying to get by. But because you're not able to get yourself out of that rut, because whether you like it or not, those jobs are needed. You know, in a 72% GDP, we're basically a consumer society. So you're going to have all these low-paid jobs. Where back in the 70s, these were still considered jobs where, well, the high school students work there, and then they move on to bigger and better things. Well, as the population goes up, and all of these, high school jobs are expanding, so there are more and more at almost an exponential rate. More adults are going to end up filling that. We're not seeing the growth with the population as far as good jobs are concerned. So if you think, well, I have a leg up on this person, or what comes down to a basic mentality of, well, if say the fast food workers get their way and they make 15 an hour, well, now here's somebody that worked their ass off so that they could have that big desk in the office environment. If they end up making roughly the same at that point, well, they lost. And it's just, it's a bit of a degree of selfishness. They think that it'll be bad for the economy, it'll cause inflation to go up, so they're going to lose their money. And so they don't want these living wages jobs. Now, if I veered off the point, I'm sorry, but what was your answer to that question?
Oh, that's pretty much what everyone says is what you said, like the haves and haves not. I don't think that's the problem. The
No?
problem is not that people don't get paid enough.
What is it?
I mean, that's a problem, but that's not the problem. The problem is there are people who get paid too much. That's the problem. We shouldn't be focusing on how can we raise the wages of people who aren't getting paid enough, because that's not going to happen. What we can do, I know people always complain, football teams, they make too much money. You know what's even worse than that? The dude who owns the football team, who sits and watches the football team, gets paid more than the people playing football.
Oh, exactly.
We need to somehow close the gap between the 1% and the 99%. That's the problem. Why aren't we looking
You're
at
sounding
this?
like a libtard, buddy.
Why aren't we looking at this, though? Like,
Yeah.
it's so hard to raise wages, and I understand why people are scared and angry, because if McDonald's has to pay $15 an hour for an employee,
Yeah.
what are they going to do? Oh, it's finally, cost effective to just automatize everything. We just won't have employees.
Oh, exactly. There's
Like,
always a push-pull.
yeah, and the way to fix it is to look at the problem differently. Why is no one talking about lowering the wages of people? Like, at the
Like,
end of the
make
day,
$4 an hour seem awesome again?
It makes no sense to me how someone can be scared that they have a house with 4 pools and tomorrow they might have to sell a pool. Like, that's where the next question got me. Like, the next question was like, if CEOs were on an incentive program, like performance-based program,
Uh-huh.
would they, would that be better? Like, the better the company does, the better the CEO gets paid, because the CEO before the new CEO who proposed the performance-based plan had driven the company into a hole, and they got to take $100 million of exit pay.
Yep. They get
And-
their severance.
And then in this question, I don't know how this is okay in a liberal school, it said, as an argument, that $100 million always makes it back into the economy and benefits everyone. And don't get me started on trickle down, that's been proven not to work for 100 years.
Oh, trickle down is such bullshit.
But I argued, like the question that I got really mad about was, do you think the performance-based pay would accurately, be able to predict the long-term effects of the CEO? Like, how are we going to pay, like, they put in a plan, and 10 years later, like, the company's making a crap ton of money because of that plan.
Yeah.
How do we adjust for that? We don't. Why does it matter? If the difference is 3 pools or 2 pools, are they living a life of grandeur, even if the company doesn't do well compared to the public? Yes.
Absolutely.
And this was a question on my final in a liberal arts, like, degree, and it just pissed me off so bad.
I would have been baffled.
It just, and there's kids and people who are being fed this crap and don't have, like, they don't have opinions. They just answer the question, and I literally couldn't answer the question because it made me so mad.
Oh, yeah.
Why are people our age and younger not fighting and talking like this? Why are we all staring at the ground? I guess that's where I'm getting at.
And see, that's the thing, is more and more of our age group are waking up. But what I've been seeing is the younger crowd, like say we're in the 18 to 27 category. I've been seeing like 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are just proud of Donald Trump. They're these ultra-conservative types. I'm like, well, how did that come out to be? Like, I don't know if maybe there's a difference in political opinion when somebody graduates from high school and goes straight to the workforce, or if they go to college. Because, I mean, liberals do have such a horrible name, but what scares me is the far right. And I would consider myself an independent. Like, I'm for guns and, pro-choice and whatever, so I straddle the fence on that. But it gets frustrating when, on the far right, you just have these crazy religious fanatics, it seems, that are now getting away with acts of bigotry. And I just don't understand how it's okay to, hate an entire religion when your religion claims to be peace-loving.
As the golden city on a hill, like, where did we start behaving terribly?
Oh, exactly.
Where in history was it okay for us to just be the terrible people? Like, we're supposed to be the loving, caring, like, look at the Statue of Liberty. That's supposed to be us, and all of a sudden we're scared?
Like,
what are we scared of?
I know. And I mean, it's a fight that's gone on for centuries, but I mean, to loop it back around, I'm seeing more and more of us wake up. I mean, Bernie Sanders has the support of a lot of the millennials because he's talking about the real issues that we care about. But I mean, he is a candidate that has been waiting for our crowd. You look back in the 70s, and that dude was still talking the same.
Yeah.
Tuition rates are too high. We're moving towards a prison industrial complex. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's so true. We need our people to actually unite and stop just stop shying away because somebody stands up and goes, I agree with what Trump said. And we're just like, I need to get out of this.
What I find so remarkable about Sanders, regardless of how you feel about him, to be the only man to actually stand up and say, I am not taking money.
Oh, yeah. He still doesn't have a super PAC.
If you see nothing else other than that, like, how can you unite when cigarette companies are telling you how to unite? How do you unite when, a big business is telling you how to live your life? Like,
yep.
It's just so remarkable to me that after all this time, someone is finally like, no, I can run and not have money. I don't have to listen to you people. I can actually make bills and ideas and decisions on my own.
What was it? I think he had close to 200,000 volunteers for his campaign. I think he actually for a while at least, beat out all the other candidates as far as fundraising. He had the largest number of contributions. Not largest contributions overall, but the largest number of contributors. And it was mostly people like us, our age, and the average donation was $36.
Yep.
Or contribution, excuse me, not donation. But yeah, $36. And yeah, people may be thinking, oh, well, they shouldn't be spending money on a political campaign if they don't have enough money to pay their student loans. First off, fuck you.
There's, an end game here. You don't put your money in stocks because, you don't want to make money.
Exactly. And I mean, I felt proud. I ended up putting, the second contribution was an accident, but I put $40 towards this campaign. I woke up and saw on my phone, apparently there was the one-click contribution.
Oh, fair.
Because they already had your information. So apparently in the middle of the night, I accidentally hit contribute on my phone and woke up to thank you. I'm like, shit. But either way, that's money that I feel is well spent. My $40, granted it's an insignificant amount compared to what all these other super PACs are able to bring in, but that was a $40 contribution to somebody that wasn't being backed by big oil big tobacco.
And that's the reason so many people don't contribute and don't vote, because of exactly what you said. It was so insignificant. Except it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
If everyone gave $40, holy crap.
Yep.
There's no insignificance there. It's a united we stand. Like,
Oh, exactly.
every little bit helps together.
It's like the only clean thing in government.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it does get frustrating to hear people. Well, I'm not voting for Bernie Sanders. He'll never win.
He's a swing, yeah.
Well,
I mean, Hillary
that
and
statement
Sanders
in
are pretty-
itself is stupid. I won't vote for him because he can't win. Well, if enough of you said I will vote for him because I hope he wins, he will win. And, I mean, yeah, Hillary seems reasonable, but she's a leader in a war room. She's not running a campaign. She's got the money and the financial backing from so many super PACs and companies that we disagree with. I mean, she has proven to lie on certain things. She's a career politician.
Mhm.
I think she would do the job well, but I'd so rather have somebody like Sanders who is honest, tells the truth. I mean, there was a little scandal, and I mean, the media is looking for every little freaking thing they can find to be like,
To
well,
sensationalize everything. It has to
Exactly.
be entertainment.
well, here's this untainted Sanders. We found a taint. Like, you guys, he's the only consistent politician. Like, he's winning he's won all
old. He's screwed up.
Yeah.
The older you get, the more things you do.
Exactly. Look at John McCain when he was running
Oh
for
my
president.
gosh.
Like, he fell apart. Literally, internally, just fell apart. But it does get so frustrating to when the media just tries to. They're waiting to get. They're like claws out already, waiting to pounce at the first thing they can find that shows that Sanders isn't as clean and doesn't have as much integrity as he claims he does.
How much money did that make the person who found the first taint and publicized it first?
Oh,
Everyone went to that publication and they made so much money.
I guarantee
Because
you.
media is stupid. It doesn't make sense anymore.
Well, he is genuine. You can't get past it. He's the only genuine candidate. Like, you compare him against Trump, Trump's just a mouthy bully. But the thing with Sanders is there was a little bit of a scandal the other day because apparently the firewall was down for Hillary Clinton's accounts for Pollster or some shit, where they just access the the demographics and everything, all the data from their voter base. Well, when the Sanders team went on to get theirs, they found they had access to Clinton's, so they explored.
Was that Sanders' team or Sanders?
Sanders' team.
So Sanders didn't even do anything.
They acted on their own.
Correct.
When Sanders found out what happened, he fired the person responsible
Oh my gosh.
and says if it ever happens again, there's the door. And like, okay, he found out somebody was
Isn't it-
acting unlawfully on his campaign, and so whether or not they brought in good information, he was just taken aback by the fact that somebody on his team would act unlawfully, so kicked his ass out.
That's not a scandal. That's the epitome of like ethical behavior.
Exactly. So they're like, scandal! And it's like, well, yeah, what's important if somebody does something wrong while on the job and they get fired for it? Why sensationalize the action that the person took because they already lost their job? All that's going to do is, and I mean, that's the whole point, it brings negative attention to the organization itself rather than the act of an individual. And so that's why I think that the media essentially has the people up in arms about Muslim refugees and Islam in general. They don't believe in God, they believe in Allah. And as somebody who's taken religious studies classes in college, I just hang my head and...
As someone who's a human being, I just go, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. It will never matter, ever.
Yeah.
Ever. What they believe in.
I mean, you guys are totally cool being arm in arm with Scientologists. Like, come on now.
Oh, that's a whole thing too.
Oh yeah, there are so many things. It feels like we're walking through a forest when there are ponds everywhere. but we just don't want to quite take a dip.
Let it be noted that Doug is now putting on his tinfoil hat, just in case.
Just in case, I don't need the evil Lord Zenu reading my mind.
No offense, Scientologists.
Unclean thoughts, Tom Cruise. But yeah, it is a frustrating world for us. I mean, like with my situation, started a family early. Like, well, I'm really kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place then because I have a family to provide for. My wife does work, so we are a two-income household. But then in addition to that, I've got these massive student loans, and because where my major was basically being influenced, I was an outlier. So like as soon as my advisor found out that I wanted to go in the private sector with arts management, I was on my own. I had to do all the planning. And being Stevens Point, Wisconsin, where do you find a place that will help you get your foot in the door to pursue the music industry rather than a nonprofit arts agency?
Is there anything in Wausau?
Not really.
Okay, yeah, I got nothing then, man.
Almost all of it around us is nonprofit. And so that made it really difficult. I was on my own, so I decided to start up my own arts management company, which we're going to get into more depth with that when I sit down with Alex Clemens to talk about his music career and all that jazz. He's not jazz, by the way. Alternative. But, so I basically got crapped on. I went off, started my business, ran that for about a year and a half, and found out that it really wasn't profitable. I was able to stick about 20-25 hours a week into it, in addition to having a family and working a full-time job. And it seems like the music industry is all smoke and mirrors, almost.
Especially in Point. I mean, what college town can you go downtown and not see a live band?
Exactly.
It's just...
And here you've got 2, maybe 3 bands, and I think one of them's a cover band, that are on a rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, Horseshoes and Hand Grenades, I'll give them credit. I know Dave Lynch from Horseshoes and Hand Grenades. He used to hang out by my dorm and whatnot in college because he worked the front desk. But, I mean, they're a good group. And, I mean, there's a reason they're locally famous. But everybody else relies on DJs, jukeboxes,
mm-hmm.
and cover bands.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you actually have original music in this town, go to hell.
Yeah, you'll never get a gig or a spot or publicity.
And I mean, there are literally entire towns and cities where one person kind of has an agreement with all the bar owners that they have exclusivity rights or whatever. And so you're like, hey, we got this band if you want to click. Sweet. Like, they won't even talk to anybody.
The Tavern League in Point is crazy.
Yeah.
Just in general, but definitely here. Like, feels like they're colluding on a very large scale.
Oh, absolutely. Like when one bar closes because they couldn't keep it open or whatever, so somebody else like pitches in that owns another bar. It's like they do have an alliance so that they can keep the entire square alcohol.
Yep. Yep.
Again, sorry to any bar owners down there. But no, I mean, with as many bars as we have in this town, it was hard as hell. I managed a group that did straight up rock covers and had a few of their own originals. I worked with an alternative artist, solo act, acoustic guitar and vocals, a metal band, basically an indie rock band, and I mean there were a couple others thrown in there, but those were like kind of the spread of the genres in which I had artists. And it was hard as hell to get a show for any of them.
Other than Kristen's or the UC,
Yeah.
I can't think of any place where a live show is taken.
Yeah.
Band show, I guess, but that's
As far
run by
as
the
far as
city
actual
itself.
events that are going to draw crowds, because I mean we did get there was one time just trying to book the metal band. Being in central Wisconsin, I called or emailed over 100 bars or venues in general trying to get a show for them. And I mean, that was Green Bay to La Crosse, Rhinelander to Madison. 100 places. Not one of them said yes. And I think only about 9 returned my call.
Oh, good.
And so, I mean, there were times where I would go to a show to support a band, and I would see 5 to 10 people there, and some of them were there just to drink.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there isn't a crowd, but so when people get pissed and they're like, well, what happened to real music? You stopped supporting it.
You actively put a knife between the shoulders.
So, I mean, a lot of us still have that thought of, like, the music industry being like, well, you've got, let's see, Universal Records, Sony, like, these big organizations, like, well, you can still make it. Well, no, actually, the industry fell apart from within. It was kind of like Rome. And more labels were closing down because they couldn't afford to keep these doors open, and it was like lavish lifestyles.
Yep.
Like, you look at the bands from the 80s, like Vince Neil from Motley Crue, he was broke because every time he got paid, he'd go buy a car. Or like Axl Rose, where they ended up blowing through their money so fast, and I mean, they were getting paid well. They might argue, but the 80s were like a time when it was awesome to be a musician. And now as people have their taste change and technology has changed, there are now 3 major record labels because they all consolidated.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not part of those big 3, it's like fighting Walmart.
I mean, there's an argument to be made about YouTube and, branding yourself and making it, but with, the 3 labels just existing, it's turned into the rest of the world where if it takes money to make money. And as a musician, if you don't have money, you don't make it. Just like corporate America, it takes money to make money. If you have nothing, you're going to have nothing probably your whole life.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it goes, because, I mean, there's that joke that goes around the internet where something along the lines of a musician loads $2,500 of gear into a $500 car to drive 100 miles for a $150 show, or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's right. Basically what it is. But then, when you think about it, it used to be where bands would get a record deal, and they would get like a signing bonus, and like they were actually making money by signing these contracts. And now it's more of a pay to play. Like, essentially, you can be paying upwards of $15,000 so that you can sign to a label.
Mm-hmm.
Like if...
Well, the labels are scared. Now that there's only 3, they're all scared of their return on investment.
It's all independent now. There was such a vacuum
Yep.
in the music industry towards the late 80s and early 90s that now that's what it is. Like, you've got these... It's just like every other industry. You've got these great big titans within the industry, but there are fewer of them now because they got too big, and so the only way to stay afloat is to monopolize.
Mm-hmm.
And what really didn't help is, do you remember probably 2010 when Ticketmaster and Live Nation merged?
I don't.
Ticketmaster was already the largest ticket provider for events, and Live Nation was essentially the largest promotion company.
Oh gosh.
Well, in order for them to merge, they had to go through the government to get it approved because of the monopoly laws. And in order to approve it, Ticketmaster had to give, I think it was like their top 3 competitors, their software in order to, move forward with the merge. And what followed then was, well, Live Nation now had more lifeblood from Ticketmaster, and so instead of just promoting shows across the U.S., they started buying venues. Think on that.
I'm staring blankly right now.
So now, like, okay, you get a summer tour going where Slipknot's going to be the headliner. Well, what do? Oh, you signed a contract with Live Nation? Well, I guess we're just going to do one show at each venue for the summer, and there'll be Live Nation venues. Well, now you've cut out everybody.
Yep.
Like, so you basically bash the artists because now there are fewer lanes on that highway to get to success the old-fashioned way. The major draw is going to be to these bigger venues that are already owned by the monopoly. So then they sell their own tickets and house it in their own show. So then they're making the money on all the drink sales.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting a portion of the merch.
And that brings back the point of the money's out there. It's just going to the wrong people.
Oh, exactly.
Like a prime example.
And I mean, yeah, a deal ended up going through where performers now make more money per show, but that's where the money is for musicians now. The reason why bands would go on tour for 2 years plus and then maybe take 6 months to a year off and then go hit the road for 2 more years was because they're getting peanuts on the album,
Mm-hmm.
and they're making that money off of performance fees and merchandise. So the music isn't even I mean, the actual song itself is owned by the band, but the recording is owned by the studio. And in a lot of cases, you're lucky to get 8% royalties. You know, so if the song sells for $1, I mean,
8 cents.
8
Yeah.
cents. And I mean, sometimes there are fees that are due to the label, and so you're lucky to make money off of the album. And that's why more people do it independently, but really what happened then, that's just the death of the music industry. So all these people that are trying to get into the music industry through college, it's not worth it. So that's, where I sit, where my interests lie within arts management, and where I'm at is I realize that it's a sink or swim kind of deal. People that I know that are making it in the music industry are putting 60 to 80 hours a week in.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's because not only do you have to write your song, if you go through a label, they'll record it for you and produce it, but still all of the marketing, the promotion, the merchandise, basically every function of running that band as a business is on the band. So it makes it a lot more difficult, and the people who are making it, like I said, are sometimes doing up to 80 hours a week just to do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So it boils down to a love of the action
More than the music?
more than the music, really. But I mean, so then instead of it being about the music for the band, because then, well, since it costs more and the payouts are less, well, you have to shave down things. You used to have your booking agent, your manager, your road manager, your tour manager. You used to have an entire entourage of essentially office staff that were behind the scenes getting it done. And then more and more that had to whittle away as the industry shrunk in the in the formal sense. And so now so I basically went to college for an arts management degree to try to get into the music industry, and there are people doing better than me financially that when they were in high school teamed up with a group of friends that started a band and went to town that way.
Yep.
Because, not to bash the CEO of Ticketmaster, I don't know if he still is, but he was a guy who, managed and produced the Eagles and stuff like that.
It's so funny, too, how quickly you forget where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the responsibilities and you just feel like you can never get ahead and you just drown in your work and you forget where you came from. I don't know what the reasoning is, but even if you were retail selling on the floor and then you got district manager, it's remarkable weeks it takes before you don't remember what the floor is like anymore.
Oh yeah,
It's
your entire
remarkable.
mentality changes.
Yeah.
And I even went through that at my last job, that desk job I was talking about. I started in basically the customer service department, on the phones because it was a call center. And that was a tough gig. Getting people calling in screaming that you fucked up and your service is fucking awful, we better get this shit taken care of. And it's like, you're literally just getting paid to get crapped on and try to turn it around.
You're getting paid to be a crappy psychologist.
Essentially.
Yes.
And I did that for a while, and then ended up in the service department where I had like basically cut out 95% of my customer interactions. And for the first few weeks, I was, I kind of coddled the customer service department because their job affected mine. And in order for me to have a decent day, they had to perform their jobs correctly. And so I worked with them, hey, remember, we got to do this, otherwise this happens. I was just nice about it. And then it got to the point where it was like, how many times do we have to discuss this? You know that they can't do that on Wednesdays because of this schedule. And I just stopped being nice about it because although I still deep down understood what it was like to go through that customer service job on a daily basis, I still expected them to get their jobs done right. And I did. I kind of forgot where I came from. Instead of being like, I know you're getting shit on all day, I'm still going to be nice to you to at least try to make this a bit of an enjoyable conversation, to just being one of the assholes.
It's interesting to have perspective on it. So I haven't made it there yet.
Yeah, but see, and that's why I ended up getting out of it. Because I realized...
it's not worth coming home feeling like an ass.
Oh, exactly. When you come home crabby and like... I'm sorry to any family members that think I was dodging them, but after being on the phone all day with just irritating people, to come home and get a phone call from a family member, you just want to throw the phone into the wall. You're like, I'm done with phones today.
Absolutely.
Ugh.
Absolutely. That's part of working retail, too. You come home, it's just, how was your day? Fine. Don't want to talk about it? No, please understand. It's done. I don't want to be there anymore.
I perform my functions.
If I had good things to say, I really would tell you, but I mean, I love you. Let's talk about what we're going to do together, because I can't talk about how crabby I am.
It is over. Do not dwell on the past. Because it is a job, and I'm getting into retail, and I look forward to it because of the types of jobs I've had up to this point. It's going to at least break up the monotony for me, and hopefully, I hope I'm bored, for the most part, is what I'm hoping. Because then it keeps my mind alert for stuff that I'm interested in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas getting screamed at on the phone all day, I mean, again, well, they wouldn't scream at you if you knew how to handle the situation.
Well, you answer the phone and you're getting screamed at. There was no situation. You answered the phone.
I've had people tell me to shove product up my ass so many times when I was just answering questions. Like, well, what do I do with this? Well, then you would want to do this, and blah, blah, blah. Well, if I would have known it was that complicated, I wouldn't have even bought this. You can take this and shove it up your ass. Thank you, sir.
Where's your address, sir?
But I mean, it's tough because what the jobs that are out there, they're not of interest to us. And I mean, you can have that tough mentality of, well, just get out and do it. You have to have a good job. But I mean, again, that's smoke and mirrors, it seems. Where is this mythical job where I'm going to go ahead and be able to provide for my family, have a decent 401k, and have health insurance, which I think should be universal. I'm sorry, healthcare should be a right, not a privilege. But, it's not out there. I've had good paying jobs that had shit insurance. I've had meh paying jobs that had fantastic insurance, but it was part-time, mandatory. It took years to get full-time. And it doesn't matter where I go. There is no magical job out there where not only am I paying my bills and having savings in pocket cash, the hours are reasonable, the benefits are actually benefits and not questionables. like
I'm fully aware that I understand where you're coming from, and I will be so happy if I get benefits and a good paying job and I'm gone 80 hours a week. Like, I've come to terms with that. That's just who I am.
But you don't have kids yet,
Even if I had kids, like...
It gets to be tough because there's a strain where, in a given day, like with my new schedule coming up, I'm going to get to wake up with the kids, get them breakfast, and probably get them hooked up with lunch, and then go to work. Well, Do you know how bad it sucks when you've spent like 3 months reading them bedtime stories every night, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're gone? Like, it's not just, if you're able to deal with that kind of stress, but the kids. Like, I mean, when I went from nights to days, the kids were awesome. Like, they were so happy to have both parents home, during the day. And then when things get changed up a little bit, and like even nights where I had to work late, the kids were awful. They don't understand it, they don't comprehend, so then they lash out with misbehavior. And so, I mean, okay, I'm just gonna say it. I wouldn't even have minded being a stay-at-home dad. Like, if my wife was making enough money, so like say she was making over $100,000 a year, well, you know what? We would reevaluate our situation. Instead of, well, she's making over $100,000 a year, I need a job where I'm making as much as I possibly can make, so we're both gone and rarely see each other as a family, so that way we have a bunch of money in the bank, so we can take 2 vacations a year. Well, it's the day-to-day time with the kids that's important, not basically blowing them off for 11 months and then, hey kids, we're going to the beach.
I guess I grew up in a different house where my dad, like, we weren't financially well off, and my dad was gone all the time.
Which, and sometimes that'll happen. I mean, both my parents growing up, we were broke. My dad was working a lot. My mom picked up a bartending job in addition to help pay the bills. And I mean, some people automatically just have a tough time of it. But
growing up, like, I understood. It was fine.
Well, yeah.
And then we got more money, and we got a lot of stuff, and my dad was home even less because he was making more money.
Yeah.
And to this day, like, I made it through school, and I want to work my ass off because I find that rewarding and enriching, and, like, it changed who I was as a kid. So I have a little bit different perspective. Like, I don't want to abandon my kids and never be home.
Oh, exactly.
But, when they're growing up, if I get, like, it's Saturday and we're supposed to, go to the park, and I get this really awesome deal that's going to pay for their college, like, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
They're going to be much happier if I go and, pay
In that type
college.
of situation, yeah. And I know there are different perspectives on it.
I mean, it's not
as long as you're making
of,
the most of the time you have. No, I totally understand that. I wasn't trying to dictate your beliefs, I'll just say that.
Right.
Yeah, using the word belief and feel when you're arguing in some sort of disagreement, not a good idea.
I'm sorry you feel that way. Well, thanks for patronizing me.
Rule number 1 about argumentation: you cannot argue against beliefs or feelings. So try to use I think, folks. Instead of, well, I feel this is the best route. You don't feel shit, you numb bastard. You need to think about it.
Right.
Oh, that's kind of harsh.
That's alright.
That's okay. We're showing how educated we are.
Is there going to be a comment section?
Yeah.
In the comment section, please hate us.
Oh, yeah. Hate it up. Sorry, I'm actually checking text messages. That's how rude I am. Now, probably my fondest memories. We've complained a lot about school and work and stuff, but
we don't take action. That's what's wrong with millennials.
Oh,
what
yeah.
have we done about it? Just talked. I thought talking was, a peaceful alternative to get things done. Isn't that what we do in this country?
Essentially. I mean, that's what Bernie Sanders.
Sorry, someone yelled at me for talking too much and not actually doing anything. And
but
in
if you
turn,
can help,
she was talking too much by telling me I wasn't taking action. So that was the whole thing.
You spent so long arguing about my inaction that you have created your own inaction.
Correct.
You sinner.
Anyways, you were going somewhere before I rudely interrupted you.
Oh, I don't even remember now, to be honest with you. Back in the day.
Argued so much.
Well, and that's, we've complained about a lot, but I mean, things have changed a lot for us. And I mean, right now, you're going through a big change. You just graduated college, and it's a rough time. I mean, that's why a lot of people stayed in school. With the recession going on, they decided to pursue higher education,
Absolutely.
get that master's, make them a little bit more equitable in the market. And no, that's not what's happening. Now you're just getting a bunch of overeducated people. And education has nothing to do with intelligence. I'm just saying this right now. I'm talking about the dollar value of a degree. If you got somebody that spent 40,000, or in some form spent $40,000 for their undergrad, spent another 30 grand for their masters, you're looking at $70,000 in the hole. And if you couldn't afford that, you're then looking at that $70,000 being mostly on college loan or like student loans through the Department of Education at, like we said earlier in this episode, 8% interest, now rising, and I don't know what the new figures are on that, to be honest with you. And so, I mean, there's so much to worry about. You just have to make the best of what you have. But, I mean, that's kind of what we did when we started hanging out more frequently. You have a nice setup along a main road, but your driveway's on a side street. And you got this nice wraparound porch. I mean, there were so many nights. I was working nights at UPS at that time, so I had to be to work by 11. I lived too far away to be worth my while to head home, come back just to work, and then go home again. It would eat that gas up, and gas was over $3. I think it was over $3.50 around that time. And, I mean, so what we ended up doing was just exchanging musical taste. I mean, we were not even close to together on the spectrum as far as music went.
Put lightly, even.
Yeah, so I mean, we shared what we had, found some common ground on that. I mean, you got me into some pretty legit bands. I mean, up till your suggestion, I had never listened to Placebo.
Oh my gosh, that's a whole realm of things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was something where you showed me one song, which was Pure Morning, to start off. That kind of got me hooked, and now I would call myself a Placebo fan.
Right on.
But other than that, the times we spent sitting out on your front porch, watching traffic go by, talking to strangers that were walking by, and all in all discussing politics, religion, and philosophy all around.
I mean, ultimately, like, I feel like I'm an intelligent enough guy in current events.
He just said feel, folks. You can't argue with that.
Yeah, you can argue. You can, in the comment section below, tell me how idiotic my opinions sound. But I formed them because of talks like that. Like, my opinions have gone one way to the others. Actually, that whole conversation about people being paid too much as a problem, that was my manager Jake's idea that I kind of stole and didn't give him credit for, but like it totally changed the way I looked at things.
Yeah.
Then those talks on the porch like formed who I am today.
Oh, exactly. And at the very least, I mean, we agreed on a lot, but we still had differing viewpoints within the topic. Though on the large scale, we agreed. We kind of haggled on the stipulations, and so we were both open to the ideas of the differing perspectives. And I think that's what people need to do today. What happened to people sitting around in the living room sipping coffee and actually talking about politics?
Because the living room doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, exactly.
It's phones.
It is.
Things like that.
We, you know, as a people, we've become antisocial. Like, behind our screens, you know, keyboard warrior style shit. We're like, oh, on our phone we can be all, I'm tough.
Anonymous.
I'm gonna tell you how it is.
Yeah.
It's anonymous. And then in person,
We're timid and scared.
Exactly.
Sorry to put words in your mouth.
We've created this virtual world where everybody's a raging asshole, but when you break it down, everyone's just scared deep down. And plus, it's considered taboo to talk about politics. Well, I don't want to talk politics. No, you kind of need to. If you have a child who has...
Politics doesn't mean Bernie Sanders versus Trump.
No. It can... Anything. And I've explained this to family members where politics are in everything. If you run a non-profit organization, there are politics involved. What is your message? What is your mission? How do you manage the internal affairs? That is politics.
Absolutely.
And whether it's a church, don't get me started on religious politics. But I mean, politics are there, whether you ignore them or not. But you can't ignore them because that's when you lose things. People will go, oh, well, they're taking away our rights. Like, you fucking gave them up. Where were you 9 months ago when this was a big story?
Right.
So, I mean, well, you're probably watching basketball or something. But that's the thing is, well, I work hard, I need to be able to enjoy life. Yeah, but you forget your first job is not to be the employee. Your first job is to be a proactive citizen within society. And in this case, I'm saying it as participation in the political process. If you don't pay attention to it, you let people get away with it. Like, why do we not have term limits? Well, because people aren't making a big enough stink about it.
Right.
Like, if why?
We had someone in the, was it Senate or Congress, who like just died at 103. Like he
What?
was still, yeah, dude. Like he was serving in a seat until he was around 103.
That's ridiculous.
He was like openly racist, all these things,
McGovern?
Voted against women's suffrage, and like was still sitting. I'm sorry I don't have the name. You could probably Google it, but yeah, just still openly racist. Like voted for segregation, voted against women's suffrage, sitting in the House.
If you can have a piece of technology where after 3 to 6 months it's considered technologically obsolete because the new thing has already come out, why the hell are you going to allow somebody to sit in the same elected office for the better part of a half century? You know, how has everything moved so fast except our political process? Well, because we've continued to let the same group of people, the same caste, if you will, because we kind of do have a caste system. It worked out that way economically.
Mm-hmm.
So you're allowing those people who all they're good at is sitting there talking and bullshitting issues. You get just enough focus that people figure out, like the same people are going to run no matter what. So then you have this group of people who are just going to go ahead and change with the times and figure out what they need to say to maintain that seat, to retain it. And it stagnates. It gets bad. It rots, and then the people don't have as much, voice with those elected officials, because now look at what we're at. Say a senator has his office getting phone calls and emails and letters in a given day talking about issues. They don't read those letters. Like,
no, absolutely not.
They scan it to figure out what the point is, then they make a tick. They tally it up. Well, this was our 5th letter today wanting to increase the minimum wage to $15. Well, that's how they determine what topics are more important because of what the voters are demanding. But that's not as many people do that anymore, so then that's not going to be a prominent issue within their platform because it's not a good sample. They don't have enough people participating in that process for it to be a legitimate issue. And we do have overall kind of a crappy society as far as engaging in the political process.
Absolutely.
Like, people claim to be nice and, we need to be kind to one another. You need to be kind to one another, but your opinions do count unless you're a fascist or a bigot.
You need to be realistic to one another.
Yeah, you need to be willing to compromise.
Yeah.
And so, it needs to get back to where if our generation got more involved, I would love to see people our age, when they're old enough to do so, because I think, for the Senate, you got to be 30 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But I would love to see our generation become more proactive and get involved with the process, because we are very much different from the past generation that's currently sitting. We're more open-minded, we're more cultured, we're more worldly observant, if you will, in my opinion.
We're the first generation who has actually grown up in a global society.
Essentially, yeah. And in a large part, it's more of a double-edged sword, but that's where technology has been beneficial. It has connected us. So when things like when the earthquake in Haiti happened, we felt for the victims. We were able to use our technology to get money and supplies down there to help them out because we care. We are part of a world population, and we actually give a shit. Borders don't matter to us as much.
Absolutely not, yeah.
Because, why can I go ahead and just walk to Canada and be cool with it? Like I need to have my passport to go a few hundred miles north of here. Like, we're more relaxed as far as people are people, let it be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, somebody walks past with a purple mohawk, we don't look at them and go, Jesus Christ, get a fucking haircut.
Degenerate.
Like, we're not judgmental. We actually practice what we preach, and that, I'm going to say it with religion again. When you run into these kind of biased, bigoted Christians, I'm not grouping the entire religion. I'm just saying
biased, bigoted, just people with faith in general. I think is fair.
It can go any which way. Because a religion is nothing more than like the bureaucratic process for faith, in my opinion.
Catalyst.
It is. But when you have these people that claim to be religious, like, and I say Jesus as the first one, like, the Christians as the first one, and I mean, I know a lot of good Christians, but Christianity is like the number one religion that we're exposed to in this area, and there are some, again, not all, I assume some of them are good people. There are groups of Christians out there that are racist and narrow-minded, completely judgmental of everybody if they don't look, act, say, or do what they feel is right. And it just baffles my mind. It blows me away how these people who follow a religion of peace and understanding and non-judgment are some of the most judgmental, hateful people I know. How do you make that okay? Well, Jesus forgives. Come on now.
We've all seen the memes.
As a non-Christian, it really frustrates me when I am able to better explain the teachings of the Bible and how conduct should be maintained by the Christian religion. And when you have to explain all that to a Christian who has kind of lost their way because they have this warped mentality, like, just because you believe in Jesus doesn't mean you're going to heaven.
It doesn't mean you're better than me.
It doesn't mean you're better than anybody.
Yeah.
And the war on Christmas, there is no war on Christmas. I'm sorry, folks. If you practice Christmas, so be it. You go do your Christmas thing. But I will even, happy holidays.
What I find so crazy about that too, I was born and raised in a Christian household. We stopped going to church. We did Christmas every single year. It's also my birthday. I don't celebrate Christmas anymore because of life events.
Fair enough.
So, like, why is that bad? Like, it has nothing, like, to do with Christianity.
No, exactly.
Christmas makes me absolutely depressed and sad.
It's a rough time of year.
So, like, why is it okay for them to remind me how crappy it is for me?
Well, that's the thing, is
they never think of the other side.
They never do. And that, to me, that's what is awful. Like, I don't say Happy Holidays, I say Merry Christmas, because that's how it should be. Like,
and
no, Christmas is one event in your religion. There are these other religions. What about Hanukkah, religion. Kwanzaa, you know?
Your life. It doesn't have to be religion. Like,
exactly.
You don't have the right to make people feel crappy. You just don't.
Exactly.
There's no war on Christmas. There's war on don't make me feel crappy, dude.
Yep.
That's what it is. That's all we ask people who are different than you. Don't make me feel crappy.
If somebody says Happy Holidays to you, you say thanks, you too. If somebody says Happy Holidays to you, don't become an asshole and start bitching about how it's Christmas. There are other religions, there are other people, different perspectives on everything. Stop being judgmental. Chill out.
Yeah, relax.
Just let it mellow. Peace to all people. Because honestly,
unless you're Syrian.
Yeah. Yeah, in that case you're kind of stuck, because I know you're a good guy, but
I'm afeared for my life.
Yeah. I think that's a topic for another time. We really could go in depth with the Muslim refugees.
If it didn't come across, that was pure sarcasm. So.
Yeah, there is so much more we could cover on that. But I mean, covered school, kind of the job outlook, how things used to be. And
Got the rants out of the way for the initial, what would you call it?
I don't know, setting up for next time.
The initial setting up for next time.
So as millennials, we are not lazy. We both work. We pay our bills. It's not that we don't want to pay off our student loans. It's just that we are caught in the grips of a perpetual debt in which the interest rates appear to be variable. And that is one. I want to cover that last point in that Huffington Post article. Once again, they were talking about how the millennials don't want to purchase big ticket items like buying a home or a car.
Because we're already 50,000 in debt.
Exactly.
Wow, logic it just is astounding.
These right wing pundits are really bashing our generation because they think we're a bunch of lazy people, and we're just bitching because we feel entitled. We need more money. We need more money. But then, well, you're not buying a house. Like, whoa! In the article, they go on to just let it loose, basically, talking about how it's not that we don't want to, it's that we can't.
There are no jobs in our area. We have to move. Oh,
Exactly.
Still no jobs. Have to move again.
Yeah.
God forbid we're 40,000, in a home mortgage and 100,000 left, and jobs are gone. Gotta go.
Exactly. I mean, for me, the closest I could have moved or would have had to move for a job, and even this is questionable, would be Chicago. Otherwise, the best places were New York or LA.
Where cost of living is just,
Cost of living is
delicious.
outrageous. I've lived in central Wisconsin my whole life, so I'm used to a rural environment for the most part. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, you found the career you wanted, now you need to go to that career. Like, it's tough for all of us. And yeah, we went to school. We don't think we're better than you because we went to school, but we will be some of the first to say that we were not quite told the truth, should I say?
We were the ones shit on when you decided to deregulate banks.
Exactly.
Just saying.
And it ain't no skin off your back because
No.
you're paying your mortgage. What we're doing is struggling to get by, keep a roof over our heads, and keep the tax man at bay. But this has been a wonderful talk. I'm so glad you joined me today for this, Spencer. It's been long overdue.
I don't know how I feel yet.
Ouch. Mostly talking about serious stuff today, but very enjoyable. These are kind of the talks that Spencer and I used to have on his front porch back when I was in college. And back when he was in college. Recent graduate. Congratulations, man.
Woo!
We
Crippling debt.
Wish you the best with the crippling debt, finding a job, and relocating to that career.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
But hopefully get to do this with you again in the near future.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me.
This has been Rawcast. Always a pleasure. Take care now.
Bye.